Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on preparing your website for takeoff. I'm Peter Talian, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'll be your host today, and our presenter is Jorge Pezo-Candelario. More on Jorge in just a moment. Some brief information on SCORE. We are a nonprofit partner of the Small Business Administration with over 10,000 volunteers nationally. SCORE Fairfield County has about 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. We offer free one-on-one counseling, face-to-face, video, telephone, and email, which can be accessed via Request Mentor link on our website or via the link on the screen. We also provide many educational workshops and webinars throughout the year, similar to the one you're participating in today. And there are extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal. Our next webinar is Tuesday, June the 6th at noon, and the topic is how to use Canva to build your website and for social media, with Bud Freund presenting. Look for the specifics on fairfieldcounty.score.org. We also have a large number of recorded webinars on our website to cover a wide range of business topics. These can be viewed at any time by clicking on On-Demand Webinars. Some useful information about today's event. We have set aside time at the end for Q&A. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button at any time during the presentation, and I will moderate those questions and answers at the end of the session. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next day or so. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Jorge Pezo-Candelario is a director, developer, designer, and dad. He enjoys wearing many hats in his role at Peralta Design. As their first employee, Jorge has enjoyed launching interactive solutions for clients of all scales since day one. Whether he's working with Fortune 500 household brands or small local businesses, Jorge has the same passion for taking their projects from the drawing board to deployment. He cut his teeth at SCS Incorporated, a 500 Inc. Amazon company, and was on the small startup team that transformed their 7-person shop into a thriving organization of over 100 employees. It's now my pleasure to turn over this presentation to Jorge. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. We're excited to be able to share all this information with you today. Much like Peter mentioned, if you have any questions, we'll be able to answer them at the end. And we wanted to get right into it and start talking about preparing your website for takeoff and how important that is. Wanted to start with a little bit of background on Peralta Design and who we are. This is our team, and every single person on this team is unique in their own way. They bring something different to the table with a bunch of different skills, and we're so excited to be able to work together to bring solutions to businesses big and small. And I couldn't be prouder of what we've accomplished over the past 15 years, and looking forward to what the next 15 years look like. I show my team because I like to talk about teams in general and how it all works. Even if you're a solopreneur, even if you're a single entrepreneur bootstrapping your business, you can't do it alone. Whether that comes down to building the website itself, working on your e-commerce, figuring out what your bookkeeping solutions are, there's going to be a need to pull in another one of the team. And all those different skills are going to be big. And that's what's going to help you grow. We like to show the Avengers here, because if we had a full team of Ironmans or Spider-Mans, we wouldn't be able to have the strength of the Hulk or have the smarts of Tony Stark. You need to be able to pull in other team members, whether that's just mentors like the good people here at SCORE, whether that's seeking out the professional help of others who have done it before, finding mentors. We highly encourage you to be active in these type of events, because you can find those like-minded people who are going to be able to help you grow and build and bring that full set of skills even if you're a one-person shop. So today we're going to talk about launching your website, and we're going to go down the pre-flight website checklist. So we're going to cover some of the key elements that we want to make sure are present when you go live, but also these are the things that we evaluate a lot of the clients who come to us for help first. If we see that you're lacking in any one of these areas, these are one of the things that we want to help you shore up and something that you should be aware of on how all these things operate. We're going to briefly get into domain name, which is the name of your website, the name of your .com, .net, .org, whatever the case may be. We're going to talk about SEO, which is search engine optimization. So that's how people are finding you on the web. On-page content, which is when someone finds you and arrives at your website, what is the experience that they get in terms of the written word that's on there? What's the message you're communicating? The design, look, and feel. A lot of this comes down to just looking the part. A lot of people are going to come to your website and they're going to determine whether or not they're going to use you as a vendor. They're going to be making comparisons. This is the first impression. Performance and load times. This is about the overall experience of your website. If you have a website that takes forever to load, you're going to have an issue there. And we're going to cover how important that is and some of the things that you can do to help. Accessibility and compliance. So this comes down to making your website is accessible by all. So whether that is folks who are using assistive technologies like screen readers or other tools, you want to make sure that your information is able to be accessible by folks no matter what device they're using, whether that's a phone, a tablet, a desktop, a laptop, or whether they're using assistive technologies to view your website. Security and stability is just making sure that your website is following best practices to make sure you can avoid any bad actors trying to break into your site and avoid being hacked, but also keeping your data and your potential clients' data safe. And social sharing. So this is going to be about getting the word out and making sure that you're ready to be able to broadcast your new website to the world. So we like to liken a website to your house and getting your house in order. And you've got to make sure that it's ready for company before you invite folks over. So all these different pieces and components go into the whole thing. If you're still starting out, let's say you don't have your website yet and you're here because you want to know, all right, where do I even get started? The minimum things that you should figure out from today are picking up your domain name and at least getting a single page landing page in order so people have something to reference when they go look you up. If people go to use you as a vendor, they go to look you up and there's nothing at all to fall back on, it can very much be a challenge to build trust. Having the website presence lets people know that you've invested in your business and you're here for the long haul. You're not fly by night, and you're here to you'll be here when you're conducting the service or selling the good and after. So your domain is your .com, your .org, if you're a nonprofit, for example, your .net, as the case may be. There's a lot of other endings that you can add on there to get a little bit more creative. But you want to make sure that you try to keep that as succinct as possible. If you were writing out a super long domain, like let's say it was, Larry's electrician services and support, that would be an incredibly long URL for people to remember and also to have to type out. So you want to keep length in mind, and you also want to keep keywords in mind. So you want to think about what domain can you use that is available. That's the most important thing too, is you might have a great domain in mind, you might have a great business name in mind, but if it's already taken, you're not going to be able to have that presence. If somebody has something similar and people type it in, let's say they type in another similar name, then you might end up being confused with another business. So you want to make sure that you have something that's available, that's unique, that has so it's short enough that they don't have to spend all day typing it in, and it's easy to remember. Creating the landing page, if nothing else, gives you the opportunity to set something up quickly. That way you have some kind of presence. All of these online tools allow you to set something up within a day. Wix, Shopify, Squarespace, WordPress. These are all builders that allow you to create a web presence without having to know code. So you can put that to your advantage and be able to use those pieces from these different platforms. They all have different pluses and minuses. Wix has a great front end builder, but you're kind of stuck within their sandbox. Shopify isn't as easy to, let's say, customize your website as Wix is, but it has a great shopping cart, the highest converting shopping cart amongst all of the platforms. Squarespace is similar to Wix in that there's a lot of different options, but their developer community might not be as big. And WordPress is great in that it's open source. So whether or not you have, whether or not the sky's the limit. They're not limited to what you can do with WordPress in that it's open source and you can manipulate it. You don't have to just play in the sandbox. Whatever you can imagine can be done. Granted, you may have to learn code to be able to get to that point, but that will be something that is we'll cover that later. Calls to action on your landing page are also important. If someone lands on your page and all you have is your logo, you're not doing enough because you need to be able to create that next point, right? We talk about calls to action as to what are the action words that you're using and what action do you want visitors to take. If you want your phone to ring, you want to make sure that your phone is on your landing page. Most phone numbers on landing pages can also be set up so that way they're clickable on mobile. So people can visit your website on their smartphone, tap your phone number, and it starts dialing you right away. It's important to reduce the amount of time between getting live and then getting there. That you want to make sure that you're not making people do a whole bunch of work between when you first arrive on the page until they get to the point where they can actually connect with you. If you want people to fill out a form, send you an email, all those words are important, and you want to make sure that if you want them to subscribe for your newsletter, for example, that's an important thing that you're saying subscribe now, order today if it's a product, call now for a free estimate, whatever the action you want them to take needs to be promised. So we'll cover a little bit more of that as we get through your website checklist. So let's go into search engine optimization. So this is how your website, your search engines like Google, like Bing, are able to funnel customers from them having a question, from them having a need, to becoming a potential client. This is one of those things that is really important for making sure that you're relevant. If you have a website, let's say that you're a lawyer, and your website doesn't have any keywords about what kind of law you practice, you're not going to be found by anyone who's doing that search. This is important when you think about how even you set up the title of your page, right? Let's say that I was looking for this presentation today. Page title, for example, is one of the most important things when it talks about all of your key search and optimization metrics. If I was looking for the name of this presentation and I didn't see that it was SCORE website takeoff presentation and I named it something totally different, but say I named it a banana bread recipe, I would never be able to find it when I was searching for it on my computer. The same thing is true for all of your pages, not only your home page, but all of the interior pages after that. You want to make sure that it's titled with what people are searching for. This is important to think about too when you're building your brand. If you have an existing brand, you've already built up a brand that people know and are familiar with, you want that to be the first part of your title. So when we talk about Larry's Electrical, for example, that we used before, if people already know Larry and they know that he's built up a good community and a good relationship, those are the things that you want to make sure you put in first. Let's say that Larry's just starting out. Nobody really knows who he is yet. You need to get that part to come in later. That's where we want to move the name of the business to the tail end of the title. And you want to put electrical services, New Haven, Connecticut, right? Because that is what people are searching for. So not only in the page title, but also in the words that you put together on the website itself, these are all the things that you want to keep aware of in that the words that you put down matter. You're also looking for a minimum of 300 pages per word to let Google know that this information is relevant and important. This is so key because a lot of people will create a page without any text in it at all. And this is going to hurt your relevancy score. If you and your competitor have are very similar in what you do, but they have a bunch of content that is constantly getting updated. Let's say they're constantly putting out. So let's say we're back at the at Larry's Electrical. Let's say he's putting out articles that say something like, "Oh, hey, every week I'm going to put out a blog post that tells people important things to look for or how to keep costs down over the summer." Or the top 10 things that you should look for as a new home buyer, right? This is all relevant information that's continuing to build his search engine presence, his page rank, because you and your competitor might have very similar services, but to Google, you're putting out more valuable content and you're putting it out more often and more frequently. So how your freshness score plays a big role, how often you update it, the quality of the content that you're putting out. If you just put electrical services, right? We talk about keywords. You say you put electrical services or fuse box repair or recessed lighting, and you just put the words recessed lighting 100 times on the page, it's not going to do anything for you. There used to be a time where you could game the system and just dump a bunch of keywords onto it, but we've gotten so much smarter now that now we're at the point where you really need to think about the words and making sure that it's important, not just for the web crawler, but also for your human audience. So those two things are so important. Making sure you have enough pages, making sure you're putting out content as frequently as possible, hitting those 300 words per page minimum, and also making sure that you can have reciprocal links. So this is one of those things that people don't think about that should be maybe common sense, but it makes a big difference. Google's going to rank you higher if other people look at you as an authority. If you have, let's say that we're using the lawyer example, and let's say there's a directory of Connecticut lawyers. You should be on that. If there's a directory of Fairfield County lawyers, you should be on that directory because that is going to give you a link that's pointing back to your website. If you can also create a page that links back to that directory, those two links talking to each other, you putting the link out to them, then putting the link back out to you, shows that people trust you. People say, hey, this person knows what they're talking about because there's more people linking back to you. This also plays a role when we talk about social media and being able to point back to your website. All things to keep in mind. So when we talk about organic SEO, this is a lot of those best practices that I was just talking about. Page titles and header tags, meta descriptions, keyword density, all of these elements are what is going to accumulate to be your organic SEO. And the organic thing is important to think about in that you want to think about this as a living, breathing thing. Think about it like a farmer and his crops. You can't just set it and forget it. If you go ahead and you do the work once and then you never touch it again, well, guess what? You're only ever going to get one crop out of it, right? If you plant your seeds and then you harvest them and you're like, okay, aren't they going to come back? Am I going to get more return on that? The answer is no. You need to be able to maintain it and you need to continually nurture it and play by the rules as they change. The rules for what lets you score well for SEO do change over time. For example, before we all had smartphones, Google didn't really rank your mobile optimization really, really highly. Before there was a time where your SSL certificate, the little lock that shows up in the browser, that only really mattered for e-commerce sites because you were sending payment information. Now, because there are so many bad actors who like to pretend that they are, let's say not you, security is ranked higher for organic SEO. So as those rules change, you have to make sure that you're adapting. So this is one of those things where you want to be aware of the things that you're doing and that you're constantly updating. The long play is that it's 4 to 6 months on average before you begin to see return on whatever it is that you put out. And that's one of those things where it's going to require patience. If you think you're going to put out your page and you're going to see all this traffic flooding in after a day or two or a week or two, it's going to take longer than that. So it's important to know, but it is worth it and valuable to set up. Now, paid SEO or SEM, search engine marketing, is what lets you take the super highway to results. So the good thing about pay-per-click is that you can target your location, your demographic. You can say, I want to create an ad that is for my law firm that is only, let's say that you only do like house closings, for example. Let's say you're only doing real estate law. You can put those keywords in and you can say, let's say you only want to work in Fairfield County. You can put your ads around just that. So now you're not only getting the premium placement at the top, you're also going into the pieces of who you want to see the ad. You can target that more specifically. And as people click onto the ad, that's another one of those things where you pay as people click. So you can set a budget. Sorry about that. You can set a budget and then you can set that monthly. And that varies by business. We do have clients that spend $10,000 a month on ads, but they'll get $100,000 in business. So it all ends up being worth it for them. You have clients who just spent $100 a month on ads, or $500 a month on ads. So it all tends to vary in different scales. So you can still play the game, but just be aware that you can set that budget and it lets you at least be involved in what that data is. You can also see who's clicking on where this traffic is coming from. That's the beauty of data, being able to make actionable decisions instead of just guessing. You take the guesswork out. You can see who's clicking on the ad, not their information, but you can see where traffic is coming from. Did they come in from the ad? Did they come in from a social boosted post? Did they come in? What time of day is most important, for example? So that might give you insight of when to launch the ad. So all of these things are things to keep in mind. Let's talk about on-page site. So there's so many things that have changed over time on the internet, but content is king, and that has been the case for so long. Google is trying to, and all the other search engines are trying to give their audience the best possible experience. So they want to have secure sites that are giving accurate information, that are as rich on information as possible. So this is exactly that piece that needs to be in place and where it's going to rank. As much as this is important for Google, though, you also want to make sure that the humans reading your site are just as engaged. The messaging that you put out, whether you come across stern or whether you come across friendly, do they see a human face when they arrive on your website? Are you using all stock photography and not any genuine photography? It becomes very evident if you don't have any real photos, and people like to know who they're going to do business with. They like to be able to be introduced to all these individuals. So this is a key thing to keep in mind, is the content that you make basically sets the tone for how other people are going to perceive your business. The way that you put that text about who you are and you're about is people like to know who they're doing business with. It makes a difference if you have been in business for 30 years and you've got pictures from the last 30 years of it being a family business, for example, and you can see that whole evolution. Wow, these guys have been around for forever. They know their stuff. I really trust them. They've got to be doing something right. All those things tell a story. So as important as it is for Google and web crawlers for discovery on that side, the messaging that you're putting out about your brand, who you are, the quality of work that you do, the commitment that you have to delivering on your promises, all makes a big difference. Design, look, and feel is one of those things that oftentimes gets left by the wayside, but you can see it even when you go and make a decision at the grocery store. Think about the produce that you buy. Just the look and feel of what what the apple looks like is going to make a difference as to whether or not you buy it. That fresh, bright apple versus one that might have been there a bit too long, is bruised, doesn't look the best. That's the decision that you're going to make. And which one are you going to go with? The same information applies for your audience who's coming in and looking and trying to make a decision on what they're going to do and what vendor they're going to pick. If it looks like you have spent time caring about who you look like, when they go to compare you versus the other vendor, you see an 86% increase in conversion. It's just the numbers. So it makes it an impact. That first design, look, and feel. It's why we think about when we talk about colors, when we talk about, hey, when you think about your bank, for example, we see a lot of blues and greens, and that those are psychological items that talk about colors of trust, for example. So these are all things that matter when you're talking about that financial space. So things to be aware of, and all these things play a role in every industry. It's not just your website, but think about the colors when you go to different restaurants or when you go to the casino. All these different places have psychological impacts. You want to try and to take advantage of that as much as you can to be able to establish that trust, build that connection between you and your audience, and make it look like you care. So that way you can then care about their business. When we talk about performance and load times, this is one of those things where as time has gone on, the attention span has dropped dramatically. So you're looking to get under a 1 second load time as much as possible. 3 seconds is about the limit of what most folks will wait for. And anything past that, you've normally lost that person already. That part of attention span is so key. You could, and this is one of those things where when a lot of people build their website themselves, they're not realizing that what they're building is lacking that, because they might be uploading that full-size image. So if you upload either the picture that you took with your phone or your digital camera, and it's this massive 2000 pixel, 8 MB photo, it might look great quality wise, but because you haven't compressed it, now you've added an extra second or two or three. If someone's on their phone and they don't have LTE, don't have great service, they might have clicked on you. You might have done everything to put your search terms in there. They click on you, and then your site takes too long to load. They're already moving back. So you want to keep your assets as small as possible. So there's tools out there like compressor.io, for example, is a great one that allows you to take your photos before you upload them to your website, compress them down, and then when you upload them to your site, you're going to have that much greater performance. There's also a new file type. There was a while where not every browser supported it, but as time has gone on, technology has evolved. So when you think about photos, you normally think about JPEGs or PNGs, GIFs, and there's a new WebP file format, WEBP, that is able to compress all the information dramatically. So you're able to it just gives you a huge advantage if you're able to use that file type. There's also free online converters for that. So you can get your website that much faster just by keeping aware of how much media you're putting on, how many photos, for example. A lot of that sometimes will come down to code. If you're using one of those builders like a Wix or a Squarespace, a lot of the code is already designed to have good performance, but you can do your part as well and be able to help on that entire piece. Accessibility and compliance. So this is one of those things that comes down to how this has evolved pretty dramatically over the past couple of years. So when we talk about accessibility, we talk about audience and where people are accessing your site from. There are so many decision makers who are making the decision on what they're going to eat for dinner tonight, or even, hey, I'm on my lunch break, I'm taking a walk, but I want to figure out who's going to build the deck and the back patio, or I have a plumbing issue and I have to figure that out. Or, we're looking to sell the house soon. What realtor am I looking for? There's so many businesses that people are trying to make that decision on the go. If your website isn't primed to work great on mobile as well as desktop and tablet, you're going to be at a disadvantage. You want to be able to communicate to that audience, no matter where they're looking at it from, no matter what limited time they might have, to be able to have a great experience cross-platform. And a lot of those builders that we mentioned at the beginning do have the mobile builder built in. That way you have the opportunity to look at it and preview it. But as a business owner, it's also up to you to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. Whatever you build, make sure you're checking it. on your actual smartphone, on your actual laptop, tablet, whatever you have. That way you can ensure that you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. We also want to talk about ADA compliance. So this is really important when we talk about just keeping yourself out of legal trouble. So there are plenty of people who have built their website to look great, but it's only looking great to people who don't have any kind of vision or any other disability or impairment, where they may have to be able to use different technologies to be able to access that information. Famously, and a few years ago, there were Beyonce came under fire, and that she had a huge lawsuit waged against her because folks were trying to buy tickets to her concert, and her website wasn't ADA compliant. She lost the lawsuit because just basic due diligence wasn't done. So these are things that you can do where you can just, what you're looking for on your end is making sure that you have, for example, proper contrast. You want to make sure that if you have a white background, you're not using, let's say, a bright yellow text on that white background, because that's going to be really hard to see. There are actual tools that you can also, if you just look up ADA compliance tools, there are tools like UserWay, for example. UserWay allows you to be able to install a widget onto your website that is going to help you pass all these different levels of compliance. And there's different tiers, right? And if you are a bigger organization, like a state or federal organization, then your liability, your responsibility is higher than just a smaller business. But regardless, if you are putting out your website for service, you're legally obligated to make sure that it is accessible. So it's one of those things where you want to make sure that you're doing the checks, making sure everything is legible, making sure everything is set up enough that way you can see it regardless of what tools you might be using. And that this is an important thing, that you're putting information onto the actual website itself. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of people get caught up in creating, let's say, a flyer. So you'll have an event coming up, or let's say you have a deal or a special, and you want to put that flyer onto the website itself. The issue with putting the flyer onto the website itself is the assistive technology and the web crawler that's scanning your website for SEO cannot read that graphic. It looks just like a big empty void to them. And so all that information is getting lost. You're missing out on relevance in terms of folks who are going to be visiting your website, in terms of how well they can see it, but also you're losing out on getting more keyword density. So if you have, rather than have a flyer that has all of the information, let's say you have an event coming up and it's Saturday from 6 to 2 at Warsaw Memorial Park, you want to make sure that instead of putting all that in the flyer and just pasting that onto the website, you want to make sure you're putting an image on there and then typing that information actually out onto the page. Ideally, indexable text, so anything that you can highlight and scan with your mouse is going to be legible by both the web crawler and by the assistive technology meter. So something else to keep in mind. Security and stability is one of those things that's super important today more than ever. The level of breaches that have occurred, even at the very high level, right? You want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can, the best with what's available to you. You haven't made any mistakes that could be costing your customers or yourself any kind of trouble with bad actors, because it is so easy to leave that door open. And it's one of those things that is continually evolving as well. It's never a set it and forget it thing. And it's this constant battle between hackers and business owners and wanting to make sure that you're keeping that information and data safe. People want to know that when you get onto your website that they're not at threat of having their information stolen. So what does that mean for you? So at the very minimum, you want to make sure that you have an SSL certificate installed on your website. SSL certificates do a bunch of things, like we mentioned before with SEO. They tell the browser that you are who you say you are. right? People have been scammed by a fake Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile website that looks just like their mobile provider. And then they've typed in the username and password, and before you know it, that's been stolen, and that's already all across the internet. They typed it into a fake site, and now that bad actor has your information. So SSL certificate lets people know that you are who you say you are, but it also encrypts all of your data. It scrambles the data that anyone is putting into your site and any information that's coming out of your site. So that's super important. Also, just in terms of best practices, and I say this constantly even within company operations, um, you don't ever want to use the same password twice. And I know this seems like a big pain in the butt, and a lot of folks are like, but I've been using the same password for the last 10 years. It's just what I know, so I don't have to go and look it up or figure it out. Sometimes that is the thing that makes all the difference between whether or not your business and your customers' information is secure or not. Why is that? Because even at the top level, there are companies that spend hundreds of millions of dollars on security that get breached. Happened to the IRS, happened to basically you can see it in the news every week. I mean, you'll get constantly you'll get an email that says, "Hey, just letting you know your data was in a breach. And then they'll give you free, life, identity theft service, but it's constant and it happens at the highest level. So what happened is, let's say that it was AT&T and your phone carrier got hacked. Now that email and that password is out on the dark web. And that means that it's just free for the taking. So these long lists get published that go back and forth to get exchanged that say, okay, I've got all of this. I basically have a bunch of keys that I can now use to everything. And if you're using that same email and password for all of your services, it's just all it takes is a few clicks to activate their bot, send it out, and have it just try that same key at every house on the block before they figure out which one it turns. So you left yourself open to a thing that could be prevented. If you know that every password is different, all you have to do is make sure, okay, I've just got to change my AT&T password. None of my other services have that same password. The login to get to my bank, the login to get into the back end of my website, none of those share the same password. So that's so important. I know it takes an extra step, and I know that it can be cumbersome, but we think about that in terms of one of the highest priorities, especially because of not only is it the worst feeling to get the call that your website was hacked from a customer, but also knowing that what does that do for your business if your site's down, right? You want to keep that stability going. And that's another thing that we like to talk about too, just making sure that you're keeping up to date with making sure that everything gets updated. Think about the apps on your phone. How often do the apps on your phone get updates? You oftentimes have to make sure that, oh, hey, I got the update for this app and this, that, the other app. And oftentimes you can see what's in there. There's security improvements and fixes. Like you said, it's this constant battle back and forth between bad actors and the people that you trust and making sure that it's secure. So if you just set it and forget it and you never update the website, you're leaving yourself open to holes that were left in the software. And no software, no matter how expensive, is 100% secure. And if someone tells you that their software is 100% secure, they're missing some valuable information. There's always going to be constant changes on what the best practices are for security. So just keep in mind to not set it and forget it, and to continue best practices by making sure that you're up to date. Social sharing, and this is one of those things that you want to be able to, once you have your website up and running, you want to make sure that you can then share it to get the word out, because social media is how so many people make a sale. It is, especially when you talk about Instagram, when you talk about TikTok, they're so ripe for being able to have someone make an impulse purchase. And if your website isn't set up to accept the social share, you're missing out on getting the word out as easily as possible. Just within your own friends and family and network is important, but then if they share, you want to make sure you're in good shape. So open graph tags, like I mentioned before, are one of those things that allows you to control how your website looks as you share across the internet. If you don't ever touch these, you might have an open graph tag where it just says the word home, and it might have a picture of whatever the first thing that was happened to be on your website. It's going to try to auto populate it and pull it. And then you might have no description underneath. So you're missed out on the opportunity to properly present yourself because those tags aren't set up properly. Ideally, you want to have the name of your business or at least the services that you provide, an image that represents you intentionally and well. So some people choose to use their logo for their open graph tag image. Some people choose to use something of them in action. So actually, if it's a product, showing the product itself. If it's a service, it's the team out on a call, making sure that they're interacting with the customer and they're happy. And then your meta description just gives you a few words, about 180 characters, between 150 and 180 characters, that let you talk about what your business is and what you do. Oftentimes, you'll have a tool. So in the back end of your Squarespace or your Wix, for example, you'll have a SEO basics tab that'll let you go in and control all of these things. So you can go in and set whatever you want to use, set your page title, set your meta description, and then your open graph tag will pick up on that. There is a tool called the Facebook debugger, for example, that you can use. If you just Google the words Facebook debugger, you're able to see what your open graph tags are ahead of time. You can test what your domain comes up as when you type in your .com, and you can see what information the scanner picks up. If you're in good shape, fantastic, you're good to go. If not, you're going to want to make updates to that. And that's also one of those things where you can, once you update it, the debugger helps the world know that you've made an update. You can go back out and rescrape it. That way it's accurate. This goes hand in hand oftentimes with what you're already doing on the SEO side of things when we talk about page title, meta description. But you can customize all of these to make sure that when your website gets shared, you have the best possible presence and the best opportunity. So this is one of those things. So couldn't be here without talking about AI. It's one of those things that you can't sweep under the rug. Super important. It's one of those things that we want to cover, in that you need to think about it as a tool rather than a crutch. There have been a lot of folks who have tried to let AI do everything, and that's one of those dangerous elements where if you kind of let AI conduct everything without looking, let's say you use it to write copy for you and you never read the copy that was written, the AI could be making a guarantee to your audience, to your customers, that you're not actually making. But because you use ChatGPT just to create the copy, you're at a loss, and you haven't read all of it through. You're at a loss for what was actually written. It might seem great when you're skimming it, but taking the time to use it as a tool and to your advantage is going to be big. Using things like AI image generation, right? So we have all these platforms now that allow you to create a photo, which is fantastic. Sometimes you can't find the photo, or you don't have the photo. There's not the right stock photo that's gonna work perfectly. As we've gone forward, now you can generate a photo, and this is big in that you have to just be aware of what that quality is too. Famously, AI still isn't super great depending on which version that you're using, at things like fingers, for example. So you don't want to put somebody with with 6 fingers or 7 fingers, or something that looks off, or like there's so many things that can, it looks like you didn't take the time to really double check everything. So it can't be one of those things that happens automatically. You can definitely use it as a tool, but make sure you're doing the part on your end, not just accepting whatever it spits out, but being able to look at those things. As time goes on, this is going to continue to be bigger. And one of the things that we like to say is, it's not that you're going to lose that opportunity. No, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to the person who's leveraging AI, where you may not. And it's just one of those things that can allow you to work faster and more efficiently, and maybe even brainstorm better, get some ideas. You know, we oftentimes talk about being able to write better copy for that has keyword density, and you can tell it, hey, I need a couple paragraphs that talk about my law firm, and here's what I specialize in, and then you can make some edits and tweaks from there. So all of these things are important to think about um, before you go ahead and use AI across all of your different tools, but it is great to use even smaller things like using Canva to remove a background. That's AI powered and generated, but it helps to know that it can save you a bunch of time. Let's say you're putting out a product. We recently had a client who wanted to put up hoodies on their website, but they didn't like the background behind them because it was taken out at the warehouse. And with AI background remover, they were able to just have a clean photo of just the product itself. So it helped them and saved them a lot of time. So just a couple of tools. So Ramon is the founder of Peralta Design. He wrote this great book, Launch Your Brand, Fastest Way to Supercharge Any Business. So this just has a bunch of the things that we talked about today about not just the website side of launching your brand and your business, but also all the other components that go into go and getting live. So great read. And we, you know, another available tool. We also do a bunch of talks like these with SCORE and a bunch of other organizations that we call Brand You. So there's just a lot of tools here that you can use to download some of these course materials. So you're able to say, hey, I'm interested. You can provide your email and then the packet will get emailed to you. Some of these things that just help you get in the right mental, hey, I would really want to get in the right headspace for this, for as I'm building my business and my brand, and we have them for the different segments of business. Rowan's got a great TED Talk, so that's another thing where you can just get some ideas about being an entrepreneur, being yourself, finding yourself for the things you're not great at, and investing in yourself and the things that you need to be able to focus on more. And this is my calendar link if you'd like to book a web consult, whether it's an existing site that you want to get a consultation on, or if you have a website idea that you haven't yet put together, you can feel free to note down my calendar link, schedule a consult. We've got those available in 15-minute increments. And yeah, we'd love to be able to talk to you. So for the last segment here, I'd love to turn it back over to Peter to conduct any Q&A that we can have. That way he can moderate and then I can answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for the very, very dynamic presentation to our large audience today. There are lots of questions out there, and we'll get through as many as we can in the 10 minutes that we have. Question number one for you, Jorge. Should I worry about any copyrights for my website content during the startup phase?
Yes, so this is definitely important and something to keep in mind, especially when we talk about images and blog posts. So on the image side of things, again, talking about AI, there are all these AI tools, basically AI detectives, that they send out to go and search websites for images that don't belong to you, that you may be using. So we highly recommend against just Googling an image, saving it to your computer, and uploading it just as is. Because at that point, that image belongs to someone else, and you could be held liable for it. We have had clients come to us where they have been kind of pinged by these lawyer bots, and we've had to go and provide the note. We licensed this image. This is a stock image. Here's the receipt number. Here's the ID number. We have all of the receipts. We're covered. Thank you. So definitely want to make sure you have copyright as a thought. Also, when we talked about SEO and putting out blogs, for example, there are a lot of times the clients will not. You can leverage other people's content too to help yourself. You can reference another article, but you always want to make sure that you're crediting that author, that you're linking out to it. That way, you have yourself covered, and that you're just basically saying, hey, you can read the full article here. But if you're taking any of the information from somewhere else, you always want to make sure that's properly attributed and copyrighted, or rather, that's attributed to the source. That way, you don't face anything on copyright law. Something to think about as you're putting the website together, for sure.
Excellent. Next question. Should one be posting blog posts on one's website or somewhere else?
So we recommend putting the blogs directly on your website wherever possible. We know that not every web platform is designed for blogging, so it might not be a viable solution for everybody. At the bare minimum, let's say you decide to blog in a platform like Medium, then you can or use your website for one purpose, and then let's say you blog on WordPress and at least link back to your website. The thing is, as you build up pages, that all that page rank is going towards whatever domain it's on. So if your blog is on blog.larryselectrical.com and you have all of your other services on just your regular.com, you want to in just your Larry's Electrical, your www.larryselectrical.com, you're splitting up where the page rank is getting put towards. So you want to focus it on one area if you can. That way it's all receiving the benefit of your hard work.
Very good. Next question. Can you set the demographic level where the pay-per-click will show?
Yes. So basically you can kind of do a geofencing by selecting, you can get pretty granular. We have clients who want to say, hey, I want to target everybody in Connecticut, or I just want to target a specific county, or I just want to target these zip codes, or you can get bigger too. You can say, I'm targeting North America. I will say that you will generally find more success the more specific to your audience that you are. But you can target a bunch of different factors like age range, like profession, and get as specific. So the better you know your audience, the more success you're going to have in kind of getting hits on your ad.
Very good. How often do you recommend checking and redoing the SEO?
So at bare minimum, you want to do that at least quarterly. And that's like, hey, we know we meet so many business owners that are literally doing everything themselves. Their HR, their sales, they're actually doing the work itself. They get so caught up in working in the business that they're not working on the business, and the blogs are one of those on the business things generally. Maybe not even blogs, but just making sure that you're checking out your SEO there. At quarterly is the bare minimum that we would recommend. Much more, if you could do it monthly, great. That's going to put you in a lot better shape. But at bare minimum, quarterly.
What is the minimum frequency of adding content to the website to get the SEO to respond positively to that website? How often do you need to update the content?
So in terms of adding new content, you're going to want to do that monthly to really be able to reap the benefits of that. Again, if you can make it at least quarterly, that is going to at least move the needle a little bit, but monthly is going to give you much better results. If you had a team and you could release something weekly, fantastic. It's one of those items that we know can often be hard to work on, and sometimes it becomes an extra challenge. For us, we started our Mission Control podcast, and that was bi-weekly. And since we shifted it to a weekly release schedule, we've seen the audience grow exponentially. So it's one of those, so there's something to keep in mind.
Very good. In terms of protection, how do I protect my own photos on my website?
So a lot of people like to put the watermark on there. Once upon a time, you used to have these scripts that would run that you could right click on a picture. You could block right clicking on the website, but anybody who knows what they're doing is either going to take a screenshot or they're going to, you can go and disable those in the console and the code as well. So really you want to make sure that you are, if you're really worried about someone else using your photos, watermark is probably the best thing you can do in terms of low cost, and just keeping it branded like that will help. At least if someone wants to steal it, they're going to have to go the extra effort of removing the watermark if you've added that.
How can I prevent someone from copying my website? It has happened to me before.
So this is tough in that there is nothing that would prevent somebody from being able to do exactly that, especially now in the age of AI. It's even easier to do now than it ever has been before. You can basically point AI at a particular URL and have it analyze it and give you not an exact replica, but an approximation of, even if you give it a screenshot of a particular website, it can now start to build out the code based on which AI you're using. So that particular challenge has become more and more difficult over time. Was difficult then, it's even more difficult now. So I mean, the only real thing is just having everything in place. That way you have the proper, once you've built something that is original, where let's say you built something wholly original that is yours, that you do own all the code for, then you can make sure your copyright's in place. And really the only thing after that is legal action. But in terms of preventing somebody from just looking at what you built and copying it, unfortunately, that's one of those things that is really tough to prevent overall.
Related to that, how do I know if someone uses my photos?
So that's another thing where you'd have to get signed up for a service. So a lot of these, let's say you are a photographer, um, and you wanted to use your photos. This is sometimes a built-in service that works for selling photos to a stock photo house. So they'll have a service that will cover that for you. So your photos that appear on their stock photo um, website will basically allow you to, a lot of times these vendors will include that kind of their lawyer bots, if you will, um, for all of the photos that they have on their website, because they're trying to protect their investment. By yourself, I mean, there's nothing that could really stop somebody from saving that photo. But again, making sure that you keep the records of everything allows you to then bring legal action against those individuals if it comes down to that.
Just a couple of minutes left for a couple of quick questions. What does open source mean?
Open source just means that that code is open and free to the world, to do and manipulate however you like. That's why we like to build in WordPress for our bigger, any of our bigger releases, and that WordPress exists. So there's another reason why so many developers use it. Over 30% of the entire internet runs on WordPress. And because it's open source, there's a huge developer community, and it means that we can do whatever we want to it. So it started out as a blogging platform, and then we've turned it to software that binds insurance policies. We've made solutions for businesses of all kinds. We've had it, fulfill orders. We've had it register folks for classes, create certificates of completion. So open source just means it's free and open to use however you'd like, and that's why we love to use it as a baseline for a lot of things.
Next quick question. I get many phone calls about Google verifying my website. What does that mean?
So this is one of those things where you have to be careful, because there is a combination of spam bots that are trying to just get you to give your information over. It's kind of like your security questions, right? Like a lot of people don't realize that when they talk about their dog or where they went to high school, you're kind of giving away a lot of your security questions to other, so that way people can get into your accounts. There are bad actors who use robocalls to try to take advantage of unsuspecting people, who will then try to just take your information. So half of those calls are generally spam. They're scammers who are just trying to get your information. There is, however, once you have a Google Business Profile, which we also recommend everybody get, Google Business Profile is, once you start creating your business and working in earnest, you'll have that little result show up next to you. It's where people can leave reviews, where you can post important information on there, where you can put photos of your business, where you can list your hours, and put your phone number, address, all of those things. Once you create a Google Business Profile, then Google will need to verify you in order to verify that you are who you say you are. So they used to do a postcard system where once you submitted a Google Business Profile request, they sent you a postcard. That way they knew that you could actually receive mail to that location and have a code on it, and you have to input that to verify. Now they've done things like, we had a law firm had to submit a video where they had to record a video of their office, do a walkthrough to verify that they were who they say they were, just because people were getting so good at pretending to be a different business that they weren't. And then they'd get checks delivered there because they'd put that as the address. So Google had to get a little bit more meticulous. So that's really the only side of things where you want to be able to verify your site is your site getting verified on as far as that's concerned, or any of their official tools. So that would only come from updating your DNS. That way you're verified in Google Search Console, Google Ads, or Google Analytics. Those things also come into play. But if you haven't spoken to a rep or you aren't setting up any of those things on your end, it basically, if you don't have you don't already have an email correspondence, I'd be wary of any of those calls. As a quick best practices on that.
Well, hey, thank you so very much. That's all the questions we have time for today. There was still a number in the queue. If you're interested in getting information, we recommend that you contact Jorge directly. His contact information is on the screen. As a reminder, a recording of this excellent webinar and materials will be available within the next day or so on the SCORE website under on-demand webinars. Our next live webinar is Tuesday, the 6th of June at noon. The topic is how to use Canva to build your website and for social media. Look for the specifics at fairfieldcounty.score.org. Again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. You will all receive an evaluation at the end. Please fill it out. It allows us to do a better job in terms of planning and working on these particular webinars for your use. Once again, thank you to all of you who joined. Jorge, thank you very, very much for your expertise. It was a dynamic presentation, and we really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Pleasure.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.